note that all committee members and staff participating in this meeting today have signed conflict of interest forms, and those are on file through PCF. For those of you who are viewing this meeting via YouTube or recording and would like to provide feedback on the grant process, you may submit your comments to the following email: caresfeedback@pinellascf.org. We will respond to your comments as soon as possible. However, this feedback will not be answered live. And I'm good to go. Back to you, Sally.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. And again, I welcome you all. Carl and Ayoko are like me on both. Hi, Carl. Hi, Ayoko. We're on both calls because there's of course another group that meets next week and every other week from this one. So they've been real workhorses, and thank you very much for being here and being helpful to the picture. So I'm turning it over to Sherry now. I think I've told you everything I want to tell you for now, at least. Sherry.
Thank you, Sally.
Sherry.
Thank you. So the next part of our agenda does include a few updates regarding Pinellas Care funded request. After our last meeting, you all as committee gave staff the opportunity to continue to go back to work with nonprofits that were tentatively approved for funding. And so I wanted to give you an update about that. Prior to doing that, I just want to give you all a status check in terms of where we are. So to date, the total amount of funds requested is $1,680,785. We have awarded $1,688,242.19. So I'm giving you that information because what I will share back with you next in a moment is only going to reflect what we funded in week 1. Don't forget, our committee actually meets every week, but there's a committee A and a committee B, as Sally just mentioned. Sally, Ayakio, and Carl actually attend both of the meetings for consistency. So I wanted to give you a status update that we have spent almost $1.7 million out of the fund. So with that, David, could you please pull up the document from week 1? What I'm going to share with you is a spreadsheet. Don't forget, this information is also posted and available online. So the applications, the reports, once nonprofits complete their reports, all that information along with their contracts will also be available online. And so contracts are literally being signed. Actually, I think as of right now, all of them have signed. David, could you pop the document up, please? David, you're on mute. Sorry.
Can everyone see the funded requests?
Yes, thank you, David.
Perfect. So if everyone is looking at the funded request, then you do see week 1. These are the applicants that you all approved. And I thought it was important for transparency that I showed you the amount that was requested versus the amount that was awarded. In some cases, those amounts have changed, and that was based upon your feedback. There were times when we had to include the de minimis cost and or other costs, specifically with House of Mercy and Senior Sunshine Series. Those are the 2 applicants that we work with behind the scenes to ensure that all of their information within their budget narratives and budget summaries are up to date and included everything as you all saw fit. So those amounts have changed. And so that's why the total is a little different. So I just wanted to ensure that you all were aware of that as we move forward. And so every week, I will present this information. So when you all see it next time, I will present updates from week 3, which is what we're currently in. When I do that, I will only present what you all as Committee A will have seen to not confuse everything. Okay. I can't.
This is Bill. Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
St. Petersburg Free Clinic. That was I think that was $1.4 million something.
That is correct.
Did that not get approved, or is that a different category, or what?
No, sir. It got approved last week. However, it's not gone to contract. So therefore, we don't share this information back. David?
St. Petersburg Free Clinic withdrew their original application, and it went back for consideration today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sheree. Just curious.
So So that's where we are. I just want to give you all an update about what's happening and what you all approved and what has happened since then. Are there any additional questions about that? I was just going to say that all this information is also located on the Pinellas Community Foundation's website under accountability. Everything will be remaining there.
Okay, thank you very much, Cherie.
You are more than welcome.
Any questions, comments? To me, it's very helpful to just kind of know where we are and what got, how we're moving forward here. So I'm sure you feel the same way. I'd just like to make a kind of a general comment about reading the grants because at least this time, more than in the past, I had some grants that I had a lot of questions about the organizations. When I tried to Google them, I didn't find all the information I felt like I needed and so on. It was very helpful to call Cherie and tell me about the technical assistance that's been offered by the CARES staff. So I think you should feel free to do that, right, Cherie?
Absolutely. Please reach out. I think what you'll find is that a number of these organizations, staff has, and so when I say staff, it's not just myself, the Pinellas Community Foundation staff, excuse me, have worked with many of these nonprofits behind the scenes to move their applications forward into a format that we believe is something that you all will be fund to ensure that it has been through all the necessary physical checks and that information has been updated. That does not mean that after the conversation today, that there might not be additional follow-up that we will do. But please note that staff is doing their due diligence. And if you have any questions at any time, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Most of these that you're seeing, we have had at least 3 to 4 conversations with them and or emails.
Thank you. And it really was very helpful to me. And probably some of you have done that already. I was just trying to do it my own, not knowing how busy the staff is, but I know that they're more than willing to give you any information that you need. And it's particularly true to have some confidence that we know about the technical assistance that has been accomplished. So, gosh, we've got 9 grants today. Am I remembering correctly? Yeah, moving right along. And we don't have Dr. Barbara or Duggan with us today. Is that right?
Yes, Barbara's here.
Dr. Barbara Morrison,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Yes. Duggan has
okay.
Duggan has a conflict and hopes to join us a little later. Okay. And don't forget that as we move through these applicants, we do have representatives from the organizations on the line. So we can unmute them as well if people have questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Betty's going to be joining us. She's our point person for the money. So it's very important to have her there too. So thank you all for being here. All right, moving right along. So we'll review the applications with the scoring sheets that we've accomplished already. Now I'm not sure. I'm looking online, but do we have a list of them somewhere? Why am I not seeing them?
Brittany, do you have the meeting documents? And we can just share the listing, or David?
I have mine, but I don't mind going.
Do you want me to share it in just with emails or just share it in the chat?
If we can just share it
On the screen.
Yeah, on the screen, just so we can see the first one.
That would be great.
Yes.
David, can you share my screen or do I do that?
Sorry, you should be able to.
Okay, perfect.
So you may recall that I had mentioned that we might look at those that are sort of in the middle first, but at least in my view, we could probably go through these one by one and act on them.
Absolutely. Can you guys see that?
It's not sharing yet.
Oh, not yet.
Kidding.
And we do have one that we had a little bit of.
There we go.
We can see it. Thank you,
Make it
Brittany.
full screen. There we go.
Thank you. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And we had one applicant, the University of South Florida. The representative is teaching. He's the only one teaching online class. in-person class, and so he will be joining us about 3:15. So we'll kind of put that
2:15.
at the,
Correction.
oh, 2:15, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to be done by 3. Thank you. Or before. All right. So let's start with church and community outreach, feeding families, asking $32,590. Somehow I must not be in sync today. Didn't we have a listing where we saw the remarks that were made by the other scorers?
Brittany
Yep.
sent that. Yeah,
I
Brittany
can
sent
pull
that
that
out.
up. I can pull that up too. Hang on one second.
Oh, that would be helpful. Thank you. I always like to see what everybody else has to say. That's fair.
Absolutely. Give me one second. Okay, here we go. Hang on one second. It's loading now.
Okay.
Okay. Come on.
So Sally, while that document is pulling up, we've also
Right.
had a request to move Neighborly, which is one of the organizations we're going to review today, to move them also to the end of our agenda as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
We can make that happen.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you guys let me know when you can see
That's
that.
great.
You
That's
can
great.
see- Perfect. Thank you, Brittany.
No problem.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay. Very helpful. Okay. So we'll start off with I think I said church and outreach, but I'm like, yeah, okay. Church and community outreach. Let's look at that one first. So it got a average score of, I think I'm seeing 86.
89.
80. Okay.
Yeah.
And anybody have any comments about this organization or any concerns about the request?
So there are no concerns about the organizations. I will tell you that the proposals that we're going to put in front of you today, we have all highly vetted in an interest to try to move things along and try to begin services and resources. What we're finding, especially from the first few weeks, is that over time, budgets and budget narratives are becoming much more refined as we have put out to organizations, more specifically what we're looking for. And we've also been, as staff, turning those around much quicker so that folks know and they can update those accordingly. And so some of these, if you have questions about what's in the budget, know that they have all been revamped and reworked. But unfortunately, because of how our system works, we could not upload them so that you all can see them on your end. So when you ask for questions about, you need backup documentation for the cost of the fridge and how it's less, they have provided that information because that is part of the requirements. So I just want you all to know that if it comes down to the physical stuff, much of this we will as staff double check to ensure that it's in there, but much of it honestly has already been addressed. So I just wanted to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sally, this is Barbara. If I might, I'd like to say the same thing about the evaluation and measurement components. I've worked with many of the organizations in behavioral health since they submitted their first application, which you've all seen. And many of them have rewritten those sections with my input. And we'll mention 2 of them today, which I think are just fine. You unfortunately have not seen the revisions, but we've worked hard to address what were some needed development in the area of evaluation. I've done the same thing on the evaluation side.
That's great. Yeah, that's wonderful help for these organizations because they sound like they're worthy organizations, but may not just have all the elements that we need to see. So that's really good. So if anybody has any questions, being a North County organization, I was surprised that I didn't know about this, but the more I read about it and the more I found out about it, they've been around a while and I think are probably doing a very not only good job, but ambitious. So it looked good to me.
I did have a question. What was the vetting? It spoke in the proposal about a vetting process. And I just wanted to know in general, what was that process, the vetting process for the clients to use the food pantry?
David, could we please unmute the representative for Church and Community Outreach to answer that question for Ayakio?
Yes, just 1 second.
Thank you. I'm looking in the chat because I'm not sure.
Susan, you can unmute yourself.
Church and Community Outreach.
Hi, Susan, you can talk now.
As far as vetting, we've been around for 34 years in the community. We used to be Maddie Williams, and we moved from the Maddie Williams area over to a building that Calvary Church lets us use. And we get a lot of help from Calvary Church, plus we get a lot of help from the churches in the area to keep us feeding everybody. And we only have one employee. It's not even an employee, it's a consultant type. We have one person that's paid, and that's it. Everybody else is volunteer.
But Susan, the question is that in your application, you noted that there is a vetting process for clients to use the food pantry. And so our committee reviewers is trying to understand what is that vetting process and how is it instituted?
Sorry, great. The vetting process is essentially and it's basically gone out the window since COVID has come through. But our primary focus was that if you come to the door, you need to be one of a certain number of zip codes that are in our very close area, so that we didn't get people from Tampa and people from St. Pete and people from Tarpon Springs. We wanted it in the community of Clearwater. So we had a certain number of zip codes. But since COVID has come, we've absolutely thrown that out the window. And now anybody who comes and says, I need food, they totally get food.
Thank
So
you.
I think it might be helpful, Susan, that you please send an email so that we can update that in your application as a question that was brought up before your organization. I think it'll be important for individuals to understand that process and that it is open to anyone who is in need. I think that'll be really important. So if you could send me an email giving me that verbiage and language so we can add that into your application, that will be important.
Yes, I can. And as a matter of fact, because I do the actual taking in of people, and we've had them in St. Pete, we've had them in Tampa, we've even had some from Miami. Somehow, I guess they were visiting or something, but we've had them in Tarpon Springs. They're coming from everywhere. So we definitely are, if you come to our door, we feed you.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Susan. I do want to note that these dollars are restricted to Pinellas County residents.
Okay.
Services must take place in Pinellas County. So it'll be really important that as you think about those that you serve, perhaps there are other ways and other funding streams that you can use to cover them, as these funds can only be used to support Pinellas County residents, and services must take place within the county.
Okay. I would say of the Tampa and, well, there was only one person from Miami, and the Tampa, I would say, was like 0.5%.
Sure. So Susan, we can definitely talk about that offline. However, I do want you to understand that that information will be captured and those expenses will need to be incorporated somewhere else, because under Pinellas Cares, we cannot pay for individuals that are not residents of Pinellas County, but we can definitely chat through that offline.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, we have Barbara or Susan with us. Is there a motion from the committee to approve the request?
I'll move to approve the request. This is Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I second. This is Ayakio.
Ayakio, thank you.
Thank you, Ayakio.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Anyone opposed? Okay, that has been approved.
Madam Chair, may I suggest a memorandum from you attached to this approval that outlines specifically the requirements for service delivery Pinellas County residents only, and that this request does not in any way interfere with the overall mission of their organization to serve Tampa Bay. My recommendation, please.
I think that would be an easy one to do, wouldn't it, Cherie?
Absolutely. I will be happy to work with Church and Community Outreach to get a statement verifying that and verifying exactly how funds will be utilized to ensure that everyone's clear about that. Thank you, Carl. We can absolutely do that. Thank you.
Great.
And just so you are aware, on the contracting end, all organizations that are funded, that are approved for funded, they do sign an attestation statement affirming the exact same thing. Funds can only be utilized for Pinellas County residents, and services must take place within Pinellas County. So there is an attestation statement that they will all sign when it actually goes to contracting. But to add to the application, I will absolutely have another statement done to address this specifically as well.
Okay,
Carl, does that meet your requirement, sir? Okay, thank you.
All right, moving right along to the next one, which I have to tell you, honestly, I'm looking on the screen and the organization's name is not clear to me. I can't read it.
It is
Florida Dream Center.
Oh, Florida Dream Center. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. And I think there was a concern about proof of experience.
Proof of insurance.
Oh, insurance.
It's small. I'm sorry.
It is small.
I can make it bigger.
And
That, oh, that's good. Thank you.
I think Cherie addressed that with knowing the follow-up on the fiscal and on the behavioral health evaluator side. That's a lot of times where my eye goes, being in grant administration and contracting. So I'll own a lot of those comments probably. But I think that knowing the process that they're all going through a little more thoroughly, I am more comfortable with all of that.
Thank you, Sarah. That's the blessing and beauty of having you on the board, you know, to speak and to share back that information. We have updated and tweaked our application just a little bit. And now this is a requirement that all of our potential organizations to be funded do provide verification of insurance. So that is a requirement that they must upload that prior to the application actually moving forward. You all, you know, as a team. So in future applications, you should hopefully see that sort of information. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
I did have a question. I am very familiar, comment and question, very familiar with the Florida Dream Center, and they're doing wonderful, wonderful work. I just had a question about their personnel cost for the grant period. It did seem a bit high to me, but maybe there was something I did not understand.
David, do we have a representative from Florida Dream Center on the line?
Zelda, you're allowed to talk and you can unmute yourself.
Zelda, if you'll please respond back to Ayakio's question regarding the personnel line item and the exact questioning of the expense for it. You'll have 3 minutes to respond and then you'll be placed back on mute.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. This is Zelda with the Florida Dream Center. I think one of the places that you will see there's a large increase if you look at the budget narrative is the hazard pay that is offered. That was something that was presented during the presentation that we went to about this program, and the fact that there's a unique opportunity to give our staff hazard pay, which we've never been able to do before, to redirect them to direct services during the COVID relief. We lost a lot of our volunteers. A lot of our programs had to be put on hold in order to manage direct services and immediate response. And that's where that hazard pay comes into place. That's a bulk of the personnel costs. And it's just something that came up that I had further discussions with Cherry on, and we're told that we can move forward with that additional blessing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelda.
Other questions? Are we ready to take action? Is there a motion from one of the members of the committee?
I move that we fund the Florida Dream Center in the amount of $56,939.12.
Thank you, Ayako.
Second,
Second.
second.
I'm sorry, I heard Bill, but I heard another person. Is it okay?
Stacy,
Bill was
but
first.
either one.
Okay, we'll give it to Bill then. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. I'm sorry. Raise your glass, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I caught you, Bill, raising your glass.
Oh,
not
yeah.
your
I'm a waterholic.
Is there any opposition? Raise your hand if you're opposed. Okay, great. Then we can move on to the next one, which I believe is Gulf Coast Legal.
It sure is. And this
Okay.
one and this one had some reimbursement as well. So that's what you'll see at the top portion of the page.
Right. Okay. Any discussion? Let's look at the remarks by our colleagues. Can you zero in on that a little bit? Thank you. That's helpful when you do that.
Oh, sorry.
It seems that there is some question in how St. Pete Free Clinic is getting a lot of the rental assistance funds and exactly how that'll be administered. Doesn't
We're on Gulf Coast.
Sure.
Yes.
That
So-
is Gulf Coast.
Sure. So I can speak to that, and if necessary, we can absolutely unmute one of the representatives. But that is something that we have had a lot of conversation about. What I appreciate most about this application is that as they help us understand the need to subcontract with St. Pete Free Clinic, they already have an existing relationship with the clinic, and they did not want to. If you think about conflict of interest and potential conflict of interest, it was not appropriate for them to be the ones creating settlement agreements, if necessary, around eviction with attorneys and with landlords and on behalf of the tenant, and also sending out the payment. So this is another way of them doing their due diligence and ensuring there is some degree of separation between the payment and the mitigation that's taken place and the actual payment of that service. And so that's why they'll be contracting with St. Petersburg Free Clinic. They have a very close existing relationship currently with them. And St. Pete Free Clinic has the ability to issue those payments directly to the landlord. And so that is why that's in place.
And I know my question is, of that 500,000 going to St. Pete Free Clinic, what portion of that is actually for rent?
So we will not know that until we actually get into it. Currently, they have earmarked $500,000. Now, of course, there is a portion of that that will be dedicated to de minimis cost, but they do expect the remainder will. And so we're just going to wait and see what clients come up. Some persons, rent for the past 6 months might add up to 10,000 as opposed to someone else's whose might be 2,000. But we don't have an exact amount just yet. But yes, with the exception of the indirect cost, the remainder will be used. Do we have a representative on the line from Gulf Coast Legal?
Yes, Chelsea.
Sure. Chelsea, if you want to provide additional feedback that maybe I might have missed regarding that. Chelsea, can you please unmute yourself?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. We can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
I was just saying, I think you did a better job of it than I could. But the reason for having those rental assistance funds is because we want this project to be more of a permanent solution. And again, you already talked about kind of making sure that St. Pete Free Clinic has the ability to distribute the funds. And I think there's somebody on the call who, if you have questions about how that's going to happen, I believe Shayna Bent is on the call and can talk about that a little bit.
I had a question on the amount, because to me it seems low. I feel like there's a lot of money going to food right now, and I feel like there might be a bigger need in this area. How did you arrive at that number?
For the direct salary assistance for our
For the amount that you're giving the St. Pete Free Clinic to help with their rental assistance.
So we budgeted about $5,000 per person, and we figured we would help about 100 people because we have existing clients and existing partnerships where we're probably going to be able to find people. So that's how we did it. I believe that 211, the CARES funding they give out is about $500 or has a max of $5,000. So that's how we did ours. We just kind of guesstimated about $5,000 per person.
Okay.
And Stacey, the nice thing is that if necessary, depending upon how things move along, that if Gulf Coast finds that they have expended this money, let's say in the first month, then we will talk about the ability for them to submit another application if they're remaining dollars and come back. So
okay, great. So they can do that.
I appreciate the county has been open to looking at things in the future. Of course, we can't anticipate all the needs, but if there's another need that arises and Gulf Coast says, hey, we need additional funding, we will figure out a mechanism for them to come back to ensure that our families are taken care of. So thank you for raising that point.
Oh, good. Great.
Cherie, this is Barbara. I have a question regarding a number I saw in their section on reporting. When they asked the number of clients served during the grant period, specifically, I think they were reporting on, if I read this correctly, the number of mitigations, the actual eviction mitigations, which was 25. Did I read that? Because it seemed low to me for the amount of money that they're requesting.
David, can you please unmute Chelsea or Shayna to respond back?
Chelsea's unmuted, but Chelsea, if you want me, I can unmute Shayna as well.
I'll answer this one. So the way that we did that was based on the amount of time that the actual staff members would be putting to eviction mitigation. And there's a big chunk, about $7,500, that's actually going to an awareness campaign. So I think the total for staff salary is about $30K. So we figured it would be 25 evictions. And the number is a little bit lower than normal. And that's because if you guys didn't know, the clerk of court had to lay off a ton of people recently. So it's taking a really long time for cases to go through the court. So we wanted to be reasonable knowing that.
I think that was important to clarify because the number seemed low to me. So I appreciate, in fact, one of your colleagues sent me a rather detailed explanation. It reminded me of the conversations I had with my first husband, who was an attorney. But in any case, the explanation makes sense. And I didn't know if there were others who were concerned about what seemed like a low target number to me. But when you explained the court process and the delays, it put that in perspective for me. Thank you.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Could you please send me again a brief email with that statement, and I will ensure that it's included with your application documents, just in case there's additional questions about that. We have a referral source directly from Gulf Coast Legal Services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a question of Gulf Coast. So have you always only dealt with St. Pete Free Clinic in terms of the rental assistance? Because there's another very effective organization in St. Pete that handles rental assistance, that as we look at the amount of these care dollars, we want to also, my goal is to also make sure that some of these dollars go into the hands of communities of color, organizations that do this work in the communities of color. So I just wanted to know, have you always just dealt with St. Pete Free Clinic because that's what you've done, or have you ever looked at other organizations that you might also have a relationship with? Does that make sense?
So I feel like that question is kind of multifaceted. First of all, I just want to address your concern about getting the money into hands of people of color. And from our statistics from last year, we serve about 50% of our clients are people of color. We're working to improve that. And our partnership with the St. Pete Free Clinic currently is not actually for rental assistance. It's for a birth certificate program. So we work with them on referrals for that. And we mostly work with people who are experiencing homelessness. So we've had that for some time now. We also partner with Daystar Clinic, and we have existing partnerships with places like CASA, the Dream Center we've worked with before. So we do try to partner with anybody in the community that we think is working with vulnerable community members.
I actually was asking the question about a subcontract to a nonprofit whose one of their main focus is rental assistance for the community.
Are you asking if we currently have that or if we've had that in the past?
Have you considered, because I know St. Pete Free Clinic has a host of services that they offer. I wasn't aware that they offered rental assistance per se, but there's an organization by the name of Pinellas Opportunity Council that focuses on rental assistance and is primarily a nonprofit that is managed by people of color. And that's what I was talking about, not those served, but the nonprofit itself.
Gotcha. So I think we actually do refer people to Pinellas Opportunity Council. I think I was just emailing with them last week, but if that's something that comes up, we would also be really happy to talk to them about funding moving forward to make sure that people of color do get the rental assistance.
I think Yakio's question, Yakio, correct me if I'm wrong, was not so much about people of color receiving rental assistance. It is about organizations who are led by people of color being considered for as subcontracts, much like St. Petersburg Free Clinic. Yakio, is that
correct?
The question?
That's my question.
Yeah.
So we're definitely open to that. And I think Cherie talked a little bit about us coming back to you all if we see additional need in the community, and we're definitely open to that for sure.
I would definitely like to, if you need more, if you would just, have a conversation with Pinellas Opportunity Council, because their focus is rental assistance. They already have in place systems to help people pay the landlord, document everything. And so I'd really like, if you have a need in the future.
Thank you.
And POC did get, Madam Chair, POC did get $1.5 million in PPP money for rental assistance.
Okay.
That to be timely.
Okay, great.
But I think that if I'm hearing Yakio's comments correctly, she raises a point about, if we consider POC, they are in a different area than St. Petersburg Free Clinic, and they represent a different group of individuals that oftentimes are not touched when you talk about people of color led organizations. And so I would hope that from this conversation, Gulf Coast Legal will take back a lens around equity and try to include organizations that are led by people of color as well as they're going through their vetting process, which I'm sure they did with St. Petersburg Free Clinic. And perhaps they'll be open to, including others, in future as they think about building and sustaining the equity within our community.
Cherie, this is Barbara. Can I elevate this conversation even one more level?
Absolutely.
I think when we were writing the guidelines for these grants and specifically looking at the logistical partner organizations, we looked at the LPOs specifically as an opportunity to engage smaller and minority-led organizations, some of whom may choose to apply directly. This is not instead of. But I think as future grantees and people who may be on the call who are considering making an application, it would be our hope that when you think about who your logistical partner organizations are, you are mindful and intentional about trying to reach out and engage minority-led organizations who may be in your area of service, tangential to your geographic area, which could help you expand your reach if you think that that is appropriate. These are organizations who are enmeshed and embedded on the ground. Most of them have very high trust factors with people of color who are in need. So I just hope that that would be a thought as you're creating these grant applications going forward for this and for any other grants that you might apply for.
I would like to echo that. I think a lot of the goal with the county had was to really have the larger organizations in the community be able to distribute the funds appropriately to the smaller community organizations. And we understand that we cannot force agencies to apply in a certain way, but however we can better facilitate that would be great, and count me in for helping facilitate that if needed.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good discussion. All right. Any other questions while we have the folks on the line from Gulf Coast? If not, are you ready to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve, but also leave open the ability to expand as appropriate to other organizations and needed in the community.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there a second?
I second. Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy. Any further discussion?
How will the motion, if approved, be captured in the evaluation? Barbara, 1 minute of comment from you if necessary, making sure that we can capture that particular piece of data in the evaluation, or if not.
It may or may not show up in the evaluation in terms of partnerships, Carl, but we will, what we do have the capacity to do is to look at persons served by ethnicity, and we will be capturing that in the participants. We have a survey for participants as follow-up. They were also tracking by race and ethnicity.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, say, raise your hand. Is there anyone opposed? Raise your hand if you're opposed. It appears everyone is in favor. Thank you. All right, moving along to the next one, and I'm not sure which one.
Inspire Equine Therapy, is that correct?
Yes, Inspire Equine Therapy Program.
Okay.
And Brittany, will you repeat their total amount they've requested, please?
I have it on a different screen. Hang on.
I have it. It's
$25,438.96.
there you go.
$25,436.96 is the requested amount.
All I could read was the 96 cents because it's such an unusual number, but there you go. We got the whole number now. Barbara, did you have something?
Yes, I'd like to address this one because I see a number of comments that I think fall in line. When I read this application, I was there. There is section on measurement and performance were a little fuzzy to me, and I have been working with them. They have a number of different kind of measures that they have compiled into kind of a survey for their participants. Among them are things that are on physical wellness. They have one on personal mental health wellness, and then they have a measure called RIDES, which is actually a skill measure to look at how well people's equestrian skills improve over time. So I was confused a little bit in the beginning about what those were, but fortunately I had a very good conversation with Melissa. And what we have decided to do, and is not reflected in the copy of the application you saw, but will be rewritten to reflect this, I asked her to send me a copy of the survey that they use. And in that survey, they had a pre-post instrument that they gave on personal mental health wellness questions. And when you look at them, it's almost a complete mirror of what you would consider to be a depression or anxiety scale. There are things like feeling hopeless, being depressed, grieving, trouble sleeping, nightmares, feeling anxious. So I suggested to her that we pull out that survey. It's a 14-item instrument on a 5-item Likert type scaling that the participant fills out. And I asked her if she thought that that was something that they could pull out for us. Not that they shouldn't measure all of their other things, but for the purpose of reporting to us, to use that survey, that mental health wellness questionnaire. And because I think it is in fact a depression symptomatic matrix. And she agreed that she would be doing that. So she's going to administer that on a monthly basis, and she has actually articulated in her description some cut points in the scoring that they would use to represent progress going forward. The scale runs from a low of 14 to a high of 70. So my recommendation to her was to think about using the definition of performance being a 10% reduction in the score on a monthly basis, not 10%, a 10-point reduction on a monthly basis. The lower the score, the less depressed and less stressed the person is. So what we're looking for is a decrease in those overall score numbers on a monthly basis. Now let me put my caveats in. I suggested the 10-point as a benchmark. However, what we will be doing and what she will be doing is as soon as they start this, the first month it's applied will constitute a baseline. I would like to have her share with me those baseline measures because the 10-point benchmark may be too high depending on what that baseline looks like. So let me put parentheses around the 10 points and say that I would appreciate the committee allowing that to be modified if the baseline figures indicate that that might be too ambitious. But believe me, I will push for some indicator that really shows that people are making progress. So I just wanted to say that from the beginning.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody have questions about that?
Barbara, is there something in place if they see like maybe someone has a mental health problem that's getting worse, or it could be more of an emergency type situation?
Yes,
maybe
I think we have someone from the organization on the call, but they do have a mechanism for flagging and referring, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's wonderful. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. So no one needs to be unmuted?
No, I just wanted to make sure they had a mechanism to refer if it's something out of their expertise.
Got it.
Any questions? Any questions of anyone who might be online? Sarah, you have something?
Yes, I do have one question. They had a pretty thorough budget narrative for the positions. For the instructor position, however, they just, unless I missed it, it seemed that they only used an increase in hours. They didn't kind of give a baseline of what the current hours were. And I just want to ensure that we're measuring the additional COVID-related instructor lessons. I don't know if the salary is the best way to do that, if it could do like a fee for service for the additional classes. I know it seems like the executive director also does other tasks, but that was more of a flag. I don't know if I need clarification from the agency or if that's more something that Cherie could work with on the back end, just so it's noted.
Do we have a staff person with us from?
I'm allowed. Yeah.
And
so
wait,
Melissa.
Cherie, were you trying to talk? I don't know.
Melissa, did you hear the question?
Yes.
Cherie is still on mute, but I think she was trying to speak.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for reminding me I was on mute. So yes, we have worked with Inspire Equine Therapy to update that information. I'm happy to share with the team the current budget narrative and budget summary as well. But yes, in their budget justification, they have delineated the hours that all of the team members at Inspire Equine Therapy, what they were doing previously, and then the additional amount COVID related, and that is the amount that we are paying for, just the additional. So thank you, Sarah, again, for that reminder as well. And I will send it over to you because I always like an additional set of eyes. So
that is all I needed. That and Dr. Barbara's notes are fine. With that, I'll wait.
Well, if we have someone on the line, I know that Stacy had a question specifically about referrals. So David, could you please unmute?
Melissa's unmuted.
Melissa,
Yes.
could you please respond to Stacy's question regarding the referral system?
Yes, we do refer to local agencies if need be. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, so I have my contacts that I know of. If they need to go to directions or if they need immediate mental health assistance, we will get them to that appropriate agency.
Thank you.
Okay, so that answers that question. Any other questions while we have Melissa? Okay, thank you very much. Sarah, were you about to make a motion?
I was going to motion to approve as noted in our discussion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it, Stacy.
Stacy, thank you, Stacy. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed, raise your hand. Thank you. It passed unanimously. Right. Thank you. Next one is, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to read this. St. Petersburg Free Clinic, are we ready?
Yep, we can go down to that.
Okay.
And while we're waiting for that conversation to happen, I just do want to note that Storehouse of America, they are trying to get on the line. I know their application will be coming up for conversation pretty soon, but I want to let you all know that a representative is having a challenge with technology getting in. So
looks like she's back on.
Perfect.
I see her in the participant list. So
okay. Thank you, David.
Okay, good. And what is the dollar amount? I know it was a substantial dollar amount for St. Pete Free Clinic for their request.
The total amount of the request for St. Petersburg Free Clinic is $1,405,800.
Restart. It's
$3 million.
That's the old amount from the previous application. It's $3,071,253. Their previous request that they submitted in week 1 was 1.4 million.
And that was the one that was withdrawn and
right, correct,
rewritten. I'm sorry, give us that number again. Whoever gave it, David, was that you?
3,071,253.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Sally, right. This is Barbara. This is another one where I went back to work with the team on the evaluation, just making it a bit stronger and more clear as to what they were going to actually measure. So they have done a rewriting of their measurement and definition of progress and benchmarks. I've reviewed it. I think it's strong. It's very good. So I just wanted to let you know. And at some point, the committee will probably be able to see that, I hope. So I just wanted to mention that.
Good. Thank you. Any questions?
I couldn't see the original application, so I was trying to figure out why it had increased so much dollar amount. I couldn't remember from the previous one because it went up quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah, I can answer that. And if we have a representative on the line, they can as well. When St. Petersburg Clinic went back and reviewed their expenditures, as you're aware, we do allow organizations to do a look back to March the 1st. And if there are expenditures that are in there that they have not been able to recoup from another payer source, where they've essentially gone into their rainy day fund to pay for, or their reserves to pay for, through this Pinellas Cares Fund, we have the opportunity to make them whole. And so that's what they did. David, is there a representative on the line from St. Petersburg Free Clinic? I'm sure Marsha's probably on the line. And
Shayna announced herself in the chat, so I'm gonna assume that she's the one to speak to. Shayna will tell us if Marsha should be unmuted too. No offense, Marsha. Oh, wait, there we go, Shayna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. So after the kind of first submission, Cherie and Barbara came back to us and challenged us to do better, and so we did. And so we kind of took a deeper look into what our needs were and what the true need was. And some time had elapsed, and we had also been able to reach out to some partners to figure out what was really possible and feasible, and really recognize that the need was greater and we were able to do more, especially for the request for some personnel and some equipment that would enable us to do so. And that's a short version of the increase in the request.
David, since Marcia is on the line, can we give her an opportunity to summarize what their measurement approach is going to be now? Just for the committee's information?
Sure, she can talk now. Hey, Marcia.
Hi, this is Marcia. So with regard to the measurement, we're talking about the behavioral health section, and our behavioral health model is based on 12-step recovery. So when we went back and we took a look at the tools that Barbara had recommended, and then looked at our tools that we already use, and showed Barbara the tool that we use currently, and she thought that that was great. So what we do is we have a weekly assessment where when a case manager meets with a resident once a week, and they take the time to go through this quick assessment that looks at, you know, how many 12-step meetings did they attend? Have they reached out to their sponsor? Who are the people currently in their social network? Are they having any issues at work? Are they having any issues in the residence? And it's really an opportunity that provides for accountability and to identify barriers that our residents have. So we decided to just take the recommendation of using one robust measure, and that's that we will measure the number of AA or NA meetings that residents attend, because they're supposed to attend at least 5 each week. And then we'll also measure the number of residents that remain sober.
Barbara, are you good with that?
I am. I think the issue of attention to personal responsibility and sobriety are the keystones for these kinds of programs, and the measure captures both of those. So I felt it was a good approach.
Great, thank you.
My only comment here, Madam Chair, would be how to bundle their weekly report and what it looks like with these kind of delivery. I'm just curious in terms of how they're going to bundle their every Friday report here. I'm sure you got it covered, Cherie and David, but I'm just curious in terms of how they're going to bundle that report.
Do you mean separating between food and behavioral health? They're different sections on the report.
I do have a question. I noticed that several of the LPOs that they are accustomed to working with are now closed due to COVID. So how do you plan to distribute to that population and that typically use those LPOs? And will that impact your numbers, your ability to reach your goal?
Sure. So our goal is based on the performance the last few months with our LPOs that remain open, and what they're capable of doing and what our own pantry is capable of performing. So how many people we're able to serve that way. We have had some conversations with new agencies about some outreach to do additional distributions. Those are still in discussion, but looking to your point on how to serve the unserved communities. We have a number who, I think all of our partners, us included, have seen a huge increase in demand. And so a lot of the clientele who visited some of the LPOs who are closed are now visiting neighboring pantries for assistance. But it's something that we're definitely aware of. I'm also hoping as the numbers go down, they reopen. We've been in talks with several of them, and it's our hope that that happens sooner rather than later. But in terms of achieving our goals are based on the numbers who are open now.
Now, I noticed that most, if not all of the LPOs that are closed due to COVID were in communities of color. Is that going to affect your ability to serve those communities? Because those LPOs were right in the middle of those communities. Will that affect your ability to serve the communities of color in terms of proximity, getting back and forth? to get the services they need?
I can't say it won't affect it at all, but a number of the ones, as I look at the map of who are closed, there are other LPOs in close proximity to those. So while they might not be as convenient for the clientele who are accustomed to going there, there are others in the immediate vicinity that I believe that they can access. But again, conversations continue as to how we continue to reach those other partners who are able to step up and either do more, or again, getting those LPOs reopened.
Yeah, that was going to be my final question. Are there any conversations about how to make sure those LPOs can reopen? Because I know, having been in social service for many years, those LPOs have been very, very helpful and useful and trusted in those communities.
Absolutely. And that's why we have so many to do for just that reason, because those are the trusted organizations in those communities. And we want to support them any way that we can. And so a lot of it has just been kind of health related because of the volunteer base. But again, as things improve, our sense is that people are getting more comfortable kind of returning. Some of these, the challenge is that their facilities are so small that there's not an opportunity to do them outside like a drive-through like so many have. Mm-hmm. And so conversations with them about how else do we do that, or conversations with new organizations about how they can step in to fill the need. I don't have an answer for you right now, but it's something that we're certainly aware of.
Okay, thank you.
I think you might be saying a little more strongly that IOCO is, to be pretty assertive about trying to support those organizations because they are in the neighborhood. And, we know many people have to walk or, take public transportation or whatever. It's not as though they can jump in the car and just go somewhere. So I think we would ask the St. Pete Free Clinic to be assertive, at least, at getting those rolling again.
Yes. Thank you, Sally.
Not to speak for you, but
yeah, no, that's where I was.
Good.
Because with this opportunity with these funds, my position is that we should take every opportunity we can to build the capacity in those communities.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Are we ready to take action? Do I hear a motion from one of the members? I don't hear a motion so far.
I motion that we approve the St. Pete Free Clinic request in the amount that they presented.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a second?
I second, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
I want to be clear, Madam Chair, could we be clear that this request is a combination of retroactive and the season between September and December? I think it's important for us, David and Cherie, to track that as part of this grant approval. Anybody disagree or agree?
I agree, absolutely. And
so thank you, Carl, for raising that. On all of these, if funds are requested for previous time periods, let's say so March through today, for example, then the organizations do have to help us understand how those funds have been expended, along with verifying that story through data as best they can. So we will be able to capture that information. That is one of the requirements through Pinellas Cares as well. So thank you for noting that, for reminding me to share that back with the team, that yes, we will have numbers and metrics and outcomes around that too. They do have to provide the number of individuals served for past work performed, just as organizations moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion on the floor, raise your hand, please. Is there any opposition? It appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much, committee members. Okay, let's move along to the Storehouse of America. This was one that I had the most questions about, mostly because I didn't know much about it. So it was helpful to talk to staff and get to know more about them. Anybody have any comments, questions? You know, it's a small organization, and we're counting on them to be able to accomplish what they say and measure it, spend the money well. Questions?
And did I notice that the amount requested went up from what we reviewed, correct?
I don't know. I didn't know that.
In the amount requested field, at least on my end, it reads the $90,259.12.
On what we got yesterday, it says 109,
501.
So you are correct. Brittany can verify that in the system. Yes, their amount did change based upon update to their budget narrative. That showed a lot of additional justification and expenditures for them to capture. So Brittany, if you could please go into the system and just verify that number. As I've said before, many of these, we are trying to turn these around as soon as possible. And so there are times when we will submit applications to you and that we are still continuing to work with them through the process. And oftentimes that does mean helping them right size their budget summaries and their budget narratives to ensure that we capture all the expenses and to ensure that they are explained.
Okay.
I think one other issue that occurs from time to time in these is if the budget narrative and the budget summary has been updated and they do not update that field in the grant as well, then they won't match. So that's the third component. So you probably reviewed the budget at this amount, but their amount requested, they never went back to update in the actual grant application itself.
Okay. Welcome, Duggan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Did you all have any other questions or concerns that you wanted to raise?
I have a question about the executive director. They're looking to hire one for this period?
So they're not. They're executive director, and this is one of the organizations that we at PCF have worked with quite a bit during this application process. Their executive director was volunteer, completely volunteer, working about 10 to 15 hours. Storehouse USA is actually a small outfront within the Enoch Davis Center. As a result of COVID-19 and the facility closing, they had to transition the way in which they do work, which of course meant extreme expanded services of the food pantry. And so the executive director changed very quickly from 10 to 15 hours a week to meet the demand, is working 40 plus hours per week. And so that is why through this process, they have transitioned. And so they're asking us to cover that additional amount of work.
Okay. I was just concerned if somebody new was going to come in and try to learn it. And, okay. Well, that makes sense.
The only addition is that they are having to hire someone to do transportation, because now they're serving individuals who can actually come to the Enoch Davis Center because they're doing stuff in the parking lot, but also there is the increased need for them to actually deliver the food. Right. And so through the application, they have asked us to support that. And that is the only position that will be hired for.
Sounds like they've had a lot of change.
Yeah.
They're keeping up with it. That's good.
Right. Questions? Any other questions? Brittany, did we get we're getting a number. Are we getting a number?
85% was the average.
Oh, we're talking about amount requested. It was according to the budget summary uploaded to the application. It's
99,284.
So we have to update our field, but on their budget summary and their budget narrative, it's $99,284.12.
Okay. And you've reviewed that, the staff, whoever does
Yes.
the review? Okay, great. All right. Any questions? Are you ready to take a motion and take action on this request? I'd love to hear a motion from a committee member.
I'd motion, this is Sarah, to approve at the accurate budget submitted in the application, I guess is what we determined.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Hayako. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Oh, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Is there anyone opposed? If you do, raise your hand. Thank you. All right.
Can you clarify who seconded that?
Oh, that was Ayoko.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Brittany, I think if we could just move back up, I think we skipped over an organization. I think we skipped over Pasadena Community Church.
We did.
Yeah, so we can back up to them, and then we will move after that to Neighborly Care, and then we'll go on to USF. It'll be our remaining order if the committee is in agreement with that. So we will go to Pasadena Community Church.
Okay.
And then we'll move forward to Neighborly Care Network, and then on to USF.
Okay. So, Pasadena Community Church.
And the amount requested is $21,402.78.
I actually don't have a lot of notes on this one. I think it was pretty clear. I think almost all the costs are going to food.
Right. That's what I remember too. And I think one of the questions that jumped out at me is not serving communities of color. But I think that their location seems to be not necessarily affluent, but certainly not where there are close by communities of color.
So that was my comment, and that's why I checked it, because it seemed to me that box should have been checked, and I was just curious why it wasn't checked. That's all.
Right. Well, maybe we should ask, is there someone from the Pasadena Community Church on the phone lines?
They did not announce themselves. Let me look real quick.
Taylor?
Jackie Taylor.
There she is. Okay.
Hello.
Jackie. Okay, we can hear you, Jackie.
Hello, Jackie. Thank you. Did you hear the question?
Could you repeat that question? I am here with Anita Marshall, and she's the Director of Hospitality for our church.
Okay. The question was, why did you not, I'm just saying this very simply, check the box that you serve communities of color. Where do you, is there any way that you can connect with them or do connect with them?
We do connect with them. The food pantry questionnaire or registration form does not require them to declare their race or their, in any way. We serve anybody and everybody that needs to be helped as long as they live in Pinellas County. We do get assistance from RCS, which they have waived us having to have that form filled out at this time. And so basically, as long as we get a name and we get that they have a residence and or consider Pinellas County as their primary residence, then we are serving all. And two of the groups that we provide food to, the Resurrection House of St. Pete is located in downtown St. Pete. Again, we don't require or even ask in any way what the race is. And the same thing with, we are providing food bags of substantial for families to the Healthy Start program. Again, the only requirement is that they are in Pinellas County. And both of those agencies have had an extreme increase due to COVID.
Okay.
This is Barbara Morrison. I mean, is it your observation that people of color are using your services? I think that's just a straight answer.
Yes, ma'am. More than 50%.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question, and I don't know that it got answered through our fiscal review. Within the budget that was presented for the church, I couldn't ascertain where the food pantry was, and that this was a significant mission of the church. I'm not saying that it's not, I just didn't know where it was. And perhaps, if you're getting food from food banks and you're using your facility for distribution, maybe you're not accounting for that in the budget, but on what volume are we talking that you're doing regular service at the church in terms of dollars within the church budget?
The food pantry and our food operations are not included in our operating budget. It is solely funded by any restricted donations that we receive throughout the year. It is not part of our operating budget.
Do you have a restricted contribution report that you could attach to the budget?
We do.
That would be great. If we could get a copy of that after the fact is fine. I just want to make sure that it's recorded that you all are doing regular business. Not saying you're not, but that we have documentation of regular business being done and that you regularly get restricted contributions for the purpose of your food work.
Okay.
Good idea. Thank you, Doug.
And Anita and Jackie, you can send that documentation directly to me, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or are you ready for a motion?
I'll make it, Sally.
Thank you, Bill.
I move that committee approve granted amount of. David, did you change it from what I have? I've got $25,269.31.
Just one moment.
I thought I heard you say 24 something.
I think he said 21,407 is what I got.
I need to look at their budget summary because the amount requested field might not be updated if they've changed it. No, it was $21,402.78.
21 what for?
$21,402.78.
Okay, so that's your motion, Bill?
Yes, it is.
For approval, is there a second?
I second, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy. Further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Is there anyone opposed? Looks like it is unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving along to Neighborly Care Center.
I just want to note for the committee, we still have, this one came and we were, in one of our fiscal reviews, we're fine with the information that was included in the budget, but we have some additional questions now because they're using a unit of service cost and what exactly is covered under that versus, there's a staff position in there for an additional driver. We want to know if any of that at all is covered under the unit of service cost, and then had a question about the rate that is being charged for the unit of service cost. I just want the committee to know that we will work out those details prior to contracting, and we've sent some explicit questions to them about that to get details in writing about these items. And it may change the total amount, but if the committee does not have major issues about the proposal, you can approve an amount up to, and then we'll still issue the contract for whatever we land on. But there were a couple lingering questions we had, not about the quality of service or anything like that.
And what is the total request, David or Brittany?
There's two components to this as well. There's a reimbursement request, and there is a looking forward request.
Right.
I'm pulling that up right now.
Okay, thanks.
So the total amount is $3,058,000.96 for the forward-looking, like the forward-looking, it looks like it's $2,798,573. And then I'm going to the reimbursement section. Just 1 second, sorry.
No problem. In the meantime, let's just see if anybody has any questions about the grant program itself. And so Sarah, do you have?
I was gonna just say that the reimbursement doesn't look like it was checked when I reviewed the application. It was all lumped together in a single budget, so you couldn't really parse out the difference.
That's the issue I'm having. They checked no on reimbursement, so there is no
and then I had a I just had a hard time following the budget narrative for such a large dollar amount, and it wasn't that it wasn't thorough, but it was hard to follow, I think, because the reimbursement costs were lumped in with the future programming costs. But knowing that that's going to get worked out a little bit with the unit costs, I will rescind any of those concerns. I did have a question as to what the wait list was prior to COVID. I know that we want to get through the wait list as much as possible. They had like a little chart in their budget narrative. I was just wondering what the wait list was 2019 pre-COVID.
I think Susan McIntyre is on the line from Neighborly if you have questions for them.
So there are two Susans. I let
McIntyre.
Thank you.
Yeah, I allowed both to talk. Susan, you can unmute yourself. There we go.
Actually, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
So this is Dave LaMacca, the executive director here, and I'm here with Susan and a whole bunch of our teams so we can answer any questions. But yeah, the question you're just asking about the waiting list prior to COVID was just over 1,100 persons. We're able to get it down to about 500 to 600 right now. So part of this is to move that the since COVID population where our CARES money is running out to take that population and then the 500 to 600 that are currently on a waiting list to eliminate the entire waiting list for the rest of this year. And then hopefully allows us to carry forward some other funds so that we could not have to close them on January 1st when this funding runs out, that we can continue to serve them.
And my concern is with, and maybe the foundation is better suited to answer this concern. It's just that we want to make sure that all of this is COVID related. And if the wait list keeps I just want to make sure that we're mindful of that. It's COVID impacts. I know there's always those in need, and we just want to make sure that this funding is going towards not meeting a need that was already needed prior to COVID and that we're addressing COVID needs. And I know there's overlap on there. I just want to get out there that we are being mindful of that. And I know that Neighborly is familiar with all that. I just needed to get it out on the record and clarify.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very true. And I appreciate your stating it because it does, we can't solve all the problems. It does have to be COVID related funding that we are doing.
And I hate to say it because it's a very needed program, and I know that there's big gaps, but we don't want to come back and have to pay back $500,000 because auditors figure something out.
Right.
So, and that's really just something on the back end that's administratively done. I don't have a concern with it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think to some extent, this is an extension of programming that was funded by CARES Act dollars already through a different funding source, and is a continuation of that program. And I think to some degree is justified in the nature of who is being served, and the vulnerability of that population with regard to COVID. And so I think they have already taken the wait list with CARES Act investment. They have taken that wait list, as you saw in the chart, down to 400 or 500 people. But I think our very low income folks who wouldn't otherwise qualify for programming that are in our aging community could, I think will be okay. Perhaps we need some additional justification of some items, but I think fits squarely within trying to meet the need.
Doug, and this is Barbara. If I can offer an observation, although these funds end on December 31st, the impact of COVID certainly will not. We will be looking at the ramifications of COVID for the next year or two. So always in my mind, when we're talking about making sure that something is COVID related, even if the issue was initiated or the need was exacerbated by COVID, that is not going to stop on December 31st.
Barbara will testify to our auditors as well.
I never talk to auditors. I don't even know one as far as I'm concerned. But that is a point which I think, is an issue, that there will be lag. There will be lag and much residual need after December 31st for things that are initiated through this window of what we're calling COVID, which is essentially March to December 2020. We're going to be living with the implications of this for decades. So I think that, the discussion about COVID versus non-COVID can get fuzzy around the edges. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we understand that. We're going to have a lot of residual effect of COVID. That's true. Okay, any other questions of the staff from Neighborly? Is there a motion to approve the request?
I'd motion to approve per our discussions and the budget clarifications.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions before we vote on the matter? All in favor, please raise your hand. And if you're opposed, raise your hand. Looks like it's unanimous. And there's still some work to be done, obviously, but we know it'll get done. And thank you for the motion and the action that you took, committee members. I think the only one we have left is the University of South Florida. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay. So do we have
Dr. McHale's on the line. Okay. And Madam Chairman, if I would, I just want to say that I reviewed the evaluation section of this, and it is rock solid.
Well, that's good. You hardly ever say that, Barbara. I'd say that's a very good sign. So that's great. Any questions that anyone has?
The one question I did have, and so looking at the proposal, no one else is addressing, infant and maternal mental health. Mm-hmm. So this is a niche grant, so to speak, and I think it's fantastic that we're able to have a group in the community address this need and do it sort of in the way that they're doing it. The question I did have gets to the staff positions, and since we're on a recorded call, I'll ask this. I did have a conversation with Chancellor Tadlock and the CFO from USF St. Pete earlier in the week. It might have even been last week at this point. For these positions, in order for us to justify funding them under COVID related stuff, they're continuing positions at the university and of this program. The question I have is, but for this funding, would these people be furloughed or laid off?
Do you want me to unmute, Dr.
Yeah, if you
McHale?
would, please.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So the simple answer to the question is yes. We've furloughed some people already. As you know, USF has consolidated into one university, and so a significant proportion of our historical funding was legislative funding that was dedicated for the Family Studies Center. That funding is no more. We have always sought to have the majority of our staff contributing to multiple projects that were funded by multiple sources. So we never leaned on the university to fund us. But we've always tried to, the continuity is so important on this project. These are the right folks to do this work. The people who have been trained to do this work, they're equipped, they've done the work for years and years. But yes, I think that their positions would end if we're not able to carry out this work. And I think that we are able to move to be able to dedicate this fall to this work, this COVID-related work in the ways that I've described. At the various levels, we are bringing exactly the right people to the table. So I don't know if that is helpful or not. You can ask me a follow-up question, but that's the reality of it.
That's helpful, and we may just get that documented a little bit differently in our language for the narrative, understanding that and that's the nuance here, that some of these positions are funded by multiple sources to do multiple things, but want to make sure that the portion for which we will assign funding is because without that, then the position is going to be cut in half or is going to be furloughed in its entirety or laid off. But we can get that clear. So,
and John is on the line with us also. So John, I think, can be helpful with that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. That's mine.
Okay, you're good with that, Duggan. Any other questions? Are you ready to take action? What was the dollar amount request, please, David? I guess we're turning to you.
Pulling that up.
I got it for you, David. We're at $249,088, $249,088.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve that amount?
I motion that we approve the grant for USF for the amount requested.
Is that Sarah? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Stacey. That was Stacy.
Stacy. Okay, thank you, Stacy. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that you, Ayakio?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Is there any opposition? If there is, raise your hand. Looks like it passes unanimously. Okay, terrific. Job well done. We might even get done if Doug doesn't talk too long. We might get done before 2:45. But no, Doug, we want you to say whatever you want you to say. Anything that you might like to say, you and Cherie, about next steps, anything that's going on that we need to know.
Madam, Mr. McHale still on the line?
Yes, he is.
You can excuse him now.
Oh,
he can stay. We'll just mute him. I think just for people to know next steps, as we go to finish up any of the issues that we needed to resolve today or from this call or that still remain unresolved, and then things move to contracting. Tomorrow we are recording a fiscal and accountability webinar. We're also recording an onboarding webinar for grantees, which will be available and need to be completed. Even though they can sign their contract to get started on services, those will need to be completed before we issue any payments. And they'll be available to grantees starting next Monday. The contracts are taking a little bit of time. Cherie and I had a call with county staff yesterday, and they're wanting to review a couple things, and then we have a follow-up call tomorrow afternoon. And I'm thinking once that's done, we're going to be okay. So I would look for contracts to be done shortly. Contracts were issued on our first week approvals already. Those are done. And those organizations have those contracts. Every one of them is actually signed and they're fully executed. We're getting through the set from last week. And then we'll get on to this week with any changes that might be coming from requested from the county. But that's next steps. And I think we continue to move ahead.
Okay, great. Cherie?
So I think that Duggan, has covered most of it. I just want to say thank you so much to nonprofits over the past few weeks and this week, as you exhibit and you help us work through this. As we are learning new things and we have new additional requirements, they have been so gracious and updated and uploaded information. We've required a few additional pieces that have come through late. Know that we as staff are doing our best to work these through. And so oftentimes there is, some back and forth budget narratives, and you all as committee members sometimes might get applications. We've tweaked things behind the scenes in the time that you all have reviewed them, and we're still continuing to work. So I just appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this. As Duggan said, we are flying this plane and it's still in the air. And so we're doing a great job. And so thank you all so much to nonprofits and to you all as committee members. Thank you.
Cherie, I have a couple of questions. Duggan, in the time frame that remains, as I understand it, this December 10th is the last time we will accept proposals for county cares. Before you answer, you may well give us some dates. But it begs the question, to what extent post-Thanksgiving, what do we look at? What do we approve? Do we have a number that says a grant request can't exceed a certain amount of money by Thanksgiving? Because it will be impractical to entertain proposals of X when in fact you've only got 3 or 4 weeks to deliver. So what's that look like in terms of logistics?
I think it's going to vary by the nature of the request and how much of it would be reimbursement for things that have already been done versus future activities, and then what the scope of those future activities might be. And it may need to be done even earlier than that. This is a very fluid process. Part of the discussion with the county yesterday was, what is reasonably believed to be able to be expended? And does that mean we have to go back at this point and start to broaden the approach, broaden the availability of funding to other types of organizations or other services? I think we now have weekly calls with the county, and I think that will be an ongoing piece of the discussion. But we're also still waiting on some what we believe will be very significant applications coming. Honestly, to the credit of some of our small organizations who have powered through this grant and gotten their act together to apply. We're still waiting on what we believe are going to be very significant applications from some very large organizations to be able to do big things in the community. We still await them even putting a number in their budget, although I have conversation with Cherie and she keeps getting, mini proposals. Is this acceptable? Is this acceptable? So we know it's out there. We're just waiting for it to come through. So I would say probably within the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a better feel about what's going to have been spent. Then we'll go to the conversation of, do we need to have an expansion? And then as we get a little bit further down the road, we may even edit those dates. And after a certain date, it's reimbursement only. You've expanded, you've done services, and we're just checking to verify the data. And sure, you can get reimbursed. That will help raise an organization's capacity to continue doing things in the future. But that might be the way that some of that comes down, is after a certain date. If it's not for services already rendered, it's not going to happen.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Well, committee, you've done great work. I told you we're on the Iditarod, so let's keep going and working through all of this. And I know it's clear that you've done your homework and these organizations. We meet again in 2 weeks. Today's the 10th, so we'll meet on the 24th. And be delighted to see you then, 1 to 3 p.m. in 2 weeks.
Excellent. Good job, Barbara. The evaluations are getting better and stronger. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
I'm
Very
actually
much.
enormously pleased. Conversations with evaluators not always easy, and the organizations have really been terrific in their response. I am so pleased. I really am.
That's good. Well, and all the staff, we thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I know you've been, you know, doing double duty in some cases. And as I told you, they're never too busy to answer your questions. So if you have questions and need clarification, don't hesitate to call Cherie, and you know, if she needs to direct you to someone else, so be it. But it's very helpful for us to have as accurate a recommendation as we can have by the knowledge that we have. And many of these organizations may be new to us, or we may have questions about certain parts of them. So I think it's all very exciting. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. I hope you are too.
Great job, Sally. Great job as always.
Thank you, Carl. So we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.